Peppa Pig is that cartoon that marked your childhood or someone else's childhood you know. But did you know that this show is full of mysteries that literally tie our minds in knots? One of these mysteries that made me spend quite some time imagining possibilities is related to a photograph we see at Grandpa and Granny Pig's house in the episode where Peppa's mom gives her old computer to the parents. Remember, as we mentioned, Grandpa and Granny Pig are Peppa's mom's parents and not her dad's, since we haven't met Peppa and George's paternal grandparents yet. The fact is that when they enter Grandpa's office to install the computer, we can see a framed photo on one of the furniture pieces, and in it are a taller piglet and a smaller piglet. The detail is that the photo is in black and white, which indicates that this photo is old, and we imagine it could be Mommy Pig herself with her younger brother, whom we haven't met yet. However, in Daddy Pig's birthday episode, we see that a copy of this same photo is on his desk. So could that be a photo of Daddy Pig with Annie Dottie in the past? If so, why is the same photo at Grandpa Pig's house, who has no relation to Daddy Pig? This is certainly one of the mysteries I would love to get an answer to in Peppa's show, but it's definitely not the only one. Who is Mr. Gazelle? When the Pig family visits Madame Gazelle's house, besides noticing the completely tilted house of the children's teacher, we also see another detail that raised a big question about the old lady's past. On the wall of Madame Gazelle's house, we can see a black and white photograph of a possible Mr. Gazelle. As we all know, Madame Gazelle has been around for many years, since she was even a teacher for both Daddy Pig and Mommy Pig. However, this was less than 25 years ago when Peppa's teacher planted the little pine tree next to her house, which is responsible for tilting Madame Gazelle's house in that way, and already at that time, the same picture was on the wall of the house. The question is this gentleman Madame Gazelle's father, or could it be her late husband? If it's the latter, then Peppa's teacher has been a widow for a very, very long time. How old is Grandpa Rabbit? Speaking of being old, we can say that Madame Gazelle is not the only character with an extremely advanced age. This is because in the episode Sea Treasure, released in the latest season of the show, when Peppa and her grandmother discover a hidden message in a bottle in the sea, they read a letter and call the number written on it to find the author of the message, who was called Rad Rabbit. When they call the number on the letter, they end up talking to Grandpa Rabbit in his renovation warehouse. At that moment, they discover that the same Rad Rabbit is Grandpa Rabbit, who claims to have thrown that bottle into the sea about 100 years ago. If this is really true, it would mean that Grandpa Rabbit is much older than 100 years, since when he sent the letter, he already knew how to write very well, indicating that he was already a few years old. But is this really possible? As we still don't know how Grandpa Rabbit could be over 100 years old and still so active. In honor of the character, let's comment #RAD, which is his name that we discovered. Are there more than one Miss Rabbit? We know that Miss Rabbit is the hardest working person in her town, and in England, so much so that she even received an honor from the Queen in recognition of her more than 100 different jobs. But seriously, is there really only one Miss Rabbit? That's because it is physically impossible for a single person to have so many jobs at the same time. And as we all know well, rabbits have an extremely high and fast reproductive capacity. In fact, we can even see versions of Miss Rabbit in other countries, like France and the USA. So we can say that it wouldn't be impossible that what we believe to be one Miss Rabbit could actually be several twin sisters who dress the same and have similar voices, since that would make much more sense than having just one Miss Rabbit who does everything at once, don't you think?
Phew! What a long day.
Only mammals. We know that in Peppa's world there are practically no humans. Except for the Queen, Santa Claus, and the pirate who appears from time to time, everyone else is an animal, and there are also some plants. And until recently, only mammals have appeared in the show behaving like humans. That's because in Peppa Pig's world, there are animals that do not behave like humans, such as ducks and little goldfish. But if you stop to think, you'll realize that all these animals that really act like animals are all from different groups than mammals, such as birds and fish. However, in the latest season of the show, in the episode where the children go to the zoo, we meet the first animal that wasn't a mammal and also acts like a human, Mrs. Crocodile. The zoo employee is from the reptile group, which are quite different from mammals. So the mystery that lingers after this appearance is, do other reptiles also behave like humans? Or maybe even some amphibians too?
Now I see.
Are the rock gazelles vampires? As we mentioned about Madame Gazelle, it became clear that she is probably the oldest character in Peppa's show, easily over 100 years old. And this would largely be explained by the fact that the character is undoubtedly a vampire, as she has no reflection and is the #1 fan of bats, two characteristics that vampires possess. Although this has not yet been confirmed in the show, it is implied for all of us. However, the big mystery is actually related to Madame Gazelle's two sisters and bandmates, Greta and Gretel. Are the two also vampires, just like Madame Gazelle? That would make a lot of sense, since all three are sisters and must be equally old. Why don't they arrest Mr. Fox? Surely the most cunning character in all of Peppa's show is Mr. Fox. The character has been able to steal all the the items from little Emily Elephant's table, tricking the little girl who didn't know that to take things, you needed to leave money in exchange.
Mr. Fox took it away for nothing.
Besides that, he appeared at night, suggesting he was prowling around Grandpa Pig's henhouse and was ready to steal Peppa's grandpa's animals. And also, in front of the police station, there is a kind of composite sketch of the character, which we can see is identical to the fox symbol. Considering that so far, Mr. Fox, his wife, and his son Freddy are the only ones of their species to appear on the show, it's not hard to deduce that he is the only suspect to be looked for. So, if all of us, you and I, can see this, how come the police never arrested Mr. Fox? Is it just me, or does that not make much sense? Maybe Peppa's town police need some training to be better officers. That would explain a lot. If you really love cartoons, we have some incredible news for you. We've launched a new quiz channel. In it, we'll test our knowledge about our favorite cartoons and movies like Bluey, Peppa Pig, and many others. It will be a journey full of challenges, laughter, and lots of fun with Wavy. Don't waste any time. Subscribe now at the link in the description or point your camera at the QR code on the screen and start playing. I'll see you there. Peppa and George in the same class? We know that Peppa and George are siblings, and that Peppa is about 2 years older than her little brother, as we can see in the episode where Mommy Pig appears pregnant with her youngest child. So if the series protagonist is 4 years old, as stated by the show's creators, we can deduce that George is around 2 years old. So far, so good. And we see that on the day Daddy Pig takes Peppa and George to school, Peppa is very annoyed because she thinks her brother will ruin her fun. However, everything goes smoothly from that day on, and George starts going to school with Peppa every day. But the question is, if they have a 2-year age difference, why do both siblings not only attend the same school, but are also in the same class? Besides George, we see that Richard Rabbit and Emily Elephant's little brother are also in the same class as the other children. If we stop to think about this doesn't make much sense. So what could explain this? Maybe Madame Gazelle is the only teacher in the school, so the 2 age groups need to be combined. Or perhaps the trio of little boys are gifted and skipped a few years of school, ending up in Peppa's class. Maybe simply the parents of the younger children need to work and leave them at school for that reason. Whatever the reason, this is something that certainly doesn't make much sense and remains a big mystery for the show's fans.
That's simply not possible.
Why does everyone fall when they laugh? And to wrap things up, let's talk about a mystery that has intrigued me since I started watching Peppa Pig a few years ago. We know that the Pink Piggy show is a children's animation made for a young audience, even though people of all ages watch it. And when something relatively funny happens in an episode, we see the children always fall to the ground laughing. However, this doesn't only happen with the children, because we almost always see the adults doing the same thing and falling to the ground laughing when something more or less funny happens in the show. So the big mystery is, why does everyone need to fall to the ground for us to understand that they are laughing a lot? The only answer that comes to mind is that some of the people who watch the show are really very young, and this is a kind of joke for those children. But even though I'm not a child, I still like to watch Peppa Pig, even if I don't understand why they fall every time they laugh. And if you also enjoy cartoons, then you'll like these 2 videos that are appearing on your screen, because we picked them especially for you. Just click on the one you want to watch first, and have fun.